with, what some of these playoff contenders need to do, like the Maple Leafs. Is it a big
it's
forward?
It's the question every year.
Yeah. Is it a big forward in the top six, Craig, that's actually an impact forward, unlike a Nick Foligno ad that they did a few years back? Is it blue line depth? Is it both? How do you feel about the goaltending? Let's start with the Leafs. Yeah.
Well, I think when they traded for Nick Foligno, I thought that was a really good, strong move to give you, a type of player, a style of play that I don't think is shown to be very successful come playoff time. The challenge for Nick was he wasn't healthy, and that became a problem for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I've said this a number of times now, and I'll continue to say it. The Tampa Bay Lightning won 62 games in the 2018-19 season, and they got railroaded pretty quick come the playoffs. That 4-game loss to Columbus. They had Kucherov, they had Braden Point, they had lots of talent, and Julien Brisebois recognized that they needed to add different players. They needed to add different types of players. He wasn't concerned about their skill, but he knew deeper down the lineup. So, he examined it. They come to what ends up happening in that 1920 season. And with the pause, people weren't sure how that was going to play out, but it ultimately played out. They trade for Blake Coleman. They trade for Barclay Goodrow. Those became really significant trades because it added to Yanni Gourde. They weren't concerned about their top end. They were concerned about adding players that would make you harder to play against deeper into the lineup. And I think that's where the Toronto Maple Leafs find themselves. There's talk about, hey, listen, we've earned the respect of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Okay, that's great. Well, now what you have to do is just follow the Tampa Bay Lightning template. I don't think it's so much about star quality as about quality, the type of player. Like, go get a Blake Coleman, go get a Barclay Goodrow, go get a Brandon Hagel. Those types of players, I think, could really help the Toronto Maple Leafs. At this point in time, when I watch the Toronto Maple Leafs play, I think that I think they can use a winger with some size and some speed up front, and I think they could use a third-line center, and obviously they can use a defenseman, because of Muzzin's injury.
Yeah.
Now, can you do all those things? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of salary cap gymnastics to be able to pull some of those things off. But how do you strengthen your team? You know exactly who you're playing in the first round.
Yep.
You know exactly who you're going to play if you win the first round. So, if it isn't as clear as possibly can be, I don't know when it'll ever be that way. So, and you don't have to improve your team to this great, magnificent extent. You just got to make your team a little bit harder to play against. I go back to Tampa Bay and I go back to Colorado last year because they won the cup and the 2 cups, and then the one last year by Colorado, their first. So they trade for Josh Manson. Terrific trade. Takes the pressure off of Eric Johnson. Now Taves and McCarr, like those players can go do their thing. Then they go and trade Brandon Cogliano. They add a quick player, a fast player that gives a lineup like more challenges for an opponent. Then they trade for Arturi Lehkonen, a versatile forward that can play a lot. They had Gabriel Landeskog, they had Rantanen, they had size, they had areas of their team covered off. They didn't need to go. They had Burakovsky. They didn't need to go in, but they added areas that made their team stronger. And you can look at it and go, well, Manson and Cogliano and Lehkonen, that's making your team harder to play against. That's making your team deeper. To me, that's what the Toronto Maple Leafs have to do. A number of years ago, I said Miles Wood would be an ideal player for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't see the New Jersey Devils trading him because he's an important player for them now. But there's players like that with size, with weight, with speed that can give your team more advantages. Nick Paul last year, not a big, significant name, but he became an incredibly important player for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And so it just adds, it strengthens your team. So I think that's where the Leafs have to look. Now, there might only be an opportunity to add a defenseman. There might be only an opportunity to add a third-line center. But where are those opportunities? Because I don't know if it ever gets clearer than this for the Toronto Maple Leafs in terms of what their path is.
Yeah, for sure. And I like what you said about the depth in the third lines because, yeah, Colorado, you talked about it, Tampa, but even like a Pittsburgh, like the HBK line winning. I mean, in a lot of ways, that won Pittsburgh the cup. I feel like a lot of playoff teams or all playoff teams have that star quality, that top-notch star quality, but you have that depth to win your rounds, not just make the playoff appearance, get that participation medal. So, yeah, I mean, with the Leafs, Craig, I like what you said also with the type of players because, yeah, the Foligno one didn't work, but that's why people try to throw like Lawson Krause in the equation or like a bunch of different guys like that. There's 6'3", 6'4" that can put in the back of the net. And obviously Colorado, the names you said, even a guy like Nichushkin they brought in. Also, what you said about the Leafs already know their opponent, and it was kind of a conversation with Crosby's quote.